the different rights they have to do that. So the reason that I'm giving this training is that I'm here at CSS with an Equal Justice Works Fellowship, which just means that I am a lawyer, although I'm not yet admitted to practice law. But I'm funded by Kay Scholler and Pfizer to help clients who have chronic illnesses manage or maintain their continuity of care when they have to transition between all these plans. So what that means is exactly the case that you were talking about, clients who are having problems getting the care that they need to manage their whatever they're managing, and it's pretty loose. I'm not going to grill you that much about the care that they need, but basically any issues that are arising with these transitions are what I'm trying to focus on. So for example, clients who are over income, these are some clients who I've actually helped, and I wanted to give examples because there are so many issues. This isn't complete, but basically I had some clients who were over income for Magi Medicaid, but they were eligible for waiver services. So I helped them complete their waiver application and prevented them from losing coverage, which took like 6 months. Also, clients who are not receiving the transitional months that they are entitled to when they actually want those fee-for-service months to transition from Magi to Medicare. I've been successful in getting some of those months extended. Also, I had a client facing thousands of dollars in bills because basically the marketplace had managed, this is in the beginning of the marketplace, but they managed to disenroll him from his QHP and enroll him in Medicaid without giving him any notice. So he had surgery and then started just receiving bills because he was disenrolled retroactively from his QHP, which is like no one even understood what was happening. So we're in the process of getting those bills paid. But that was an issue that it's not like this client appeared and was like, it took months to figure out what happened. So those are some examples. So today I'm just going to give a brief update on the Magi Medicaid to Medicare transitions, and also go through some tools for advocates for us to help clients who are switching insurance and need help accessing doctors. Network adequacy rights for all consumers, I'm going to go over a little. That's really about clients who need to find a doctor and know whether or not their network is good enough to provide them with one. Transitional care rights are for clients who want to keep their doctor for a period of time when they switch plans and how they can possibly do that. And also talking a little bit about informal plan advocacy, just things that have worked and maybe other people have ideas of things that have worked with plans. And also I know that not everyone's a navigator, but just thinking through, even if you're not a navigator, briefly tips and tricks to choose the right plan, because I think a lot of the time when clients are switching, you have to it's a little more involved than you would want it to be, or assume it would be if you're switching health insurance. Okay, so Magi Medicare transitions. What should happen? Oh, I think you can go through all the, I did not realize that the slideshow did this now. It's okay, we can just, I'm not that fancy. Okay, oh yeah. So what is supposed to happen? When a client becomes Medicare eligible during their 12-month Magi enrollment, either because they turned 65 or they've received their 24 months of SSD and they're eligible for Medicare, they will not be disenrolled from Medicaid entirely. They will be disenrolled from their Medicaid managed care plan and enrolled in fee-for-service. They should be receiving their reimbursement for their Part B premium, although as you mentioned, it is reimbursement, so it takes at least 1 month to kick in, and the client will have to pay the premium and get reimbursed from the state. And when clients recertify, so when their 12 months is up or around then, they should receive the month of recertification plus 3 months if outside New York and 4 months if in New York of extended fee-for-service Medicaid, and that is supposed to buy them time to apply at the local district for non-Magi Medicaid products or programs. So this is that's all what's supposed to happen, and I know that we've all seen issues of like all of those things not happening or something. there's so many permutations. But that, from what we've seen from the state, is what is supposed to be happening. But what we can do, first, we call the marketplace to request Part B premiums being reimbursed, and I understand that there's definitely issues with the marketplace call center staff not understanding this, but we've been told that you are actually supposed to call and request this reimbursement because the automated system is not automated. So I'm having a case right now where I am requesting reimbursement going back. It's probably not going to work, but I'm trying to, because I'm requesting reimbursement from the first month of coverage before the client was disenrolled from their managed care, but I'm still going to try. Yeah.
Are clients getting any communication about them needing support?
No. So clients are not receiving notices telling them that they need this, that they need to do this. Clients are not really receiving notices. If anyone gets a helpful notice, it would be really great for me to see it because I have not yet. Yeah, we'll frame it. We'll round it in a gold ring.
In Long Island, we have so many baby boomers that are starting to age into 65.
Yeah.
So while we're enrolling someone, if we notice that they are going to 65 within their enrollment year, we keep a list of them.
Okay.
And have and put it like on our calendar to go in and check their account and see what happens.
Great. So maybe that's awesome. And I think that there's some questions for us as a network of what we need to do because that's a lot. That's an extra step.
Yeah.
But
it kind of helps us get in front of whatever the
right. So it actually might be useful for us to talk more about if we could write a letter to send to these clients, if you have a list of them, what we would tell them to do in that letter. So that's great. So one is, calling to get the premiums reimbursed. Then you can make a life change in the client's marketplace application to show that they're getting Medicare, although as Diane said, that may or may not trigger whatever it's supposed to trigger in the system. Also helping clients understand the transition from Medicaid managed care to fee-for-service and that Medicare is now primary. That's a small bullet and a big thing to help clients understand, and I think we're trying to work on some documents explaining the difference between fee-for-service and managed care. I know it's something that I spend a lot of time talking to clients about when they first are enrolled. That would be good. And also, report any problems to whoever your travel point person is. I guess I should change this to "and me," because just basically, we've been seeing, like I said, clients not getting reimbursed for Part B, being dropped for Magi, who need extensions, also clients who fee-for-service is harming them. So all of these issues we're just trying to track, but also actively help with. So I'm going to switch gears to basically entirely now. So if anyone has specific questions about those right now and wants me to talk about them. Okay, it sounds like people have kind of seen a lot of this stuff. So, okay, moving on to network adequacy rates. So, what is network adequacy? Basically, clients have to stay within their insurance network, and so they have rights that their network is supposed to provide them. Have certain specialties and geographic requirements. Oh yeah, we can go back for a second. No, it's fine.
When it says they should receive reimbursement for Part B premiums, so the client gets the check from the marketplace?
Yeah.
Does that happen every month? Like, say they're 6 months into their Magi Medicaid, they become eligible for Medicare. They pay the first month, 7 months of the 104. And then they'll be getting a check from the marketplace to reimburse them.
So
and that will happen the next, for the remaining months.
Yeah. Well, it's hard for me to answer this question of what happens because I've seen a couple of different things, and from what I understand, I'm not sure what is actually supposed to happen.
Right.
What I do know is that
the marketplace should say.
yeah, a lot of things would make more sense than this. No, but so what's supposed to happen is that the client either requests the reimbursement or somehow within their system, the marketplace knows to send the client a reimbursement. The marketplace is only reimbursing for months where the client is not enrolled in their managed care plan. So for some clients, that's going to present a problem because they are none of this is happening in the way that it's in the timeline that it's supposed to.
It's happening retroactively.
Right. So some clients are being disenrolled either before they get to Medicare. Some clients months later. It's very different, but it's that. So what the marketplace has said is that they will only be reimbursing for the month where the client has fee-for-service, Medicaid, and Medicare. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be requesting that they reimburse for other months, but that's what we've heard from them. Yeah.
And I think that we can definitely sharp, right? Because navigators are not statistics once you go through what happens. So I would really appreciate that. It's great that you guys are doing that. I think that what do we need as a network to push harder on it is more data, right? Because we can just outline the problem, but yeah, so if you have any cases, send them to us. Or that, they know, or 64,
And we'll be 65 or somewhere in there.
yes. And we have a large case of so I think we have a bunch here of cases, correct?
Yeah,
And then you guys are the health and welfare about the 60 or 5?
we
If we can send like 10 cases, I think that's enough.
Yeah, I mean, sure. And then people want to call me instead of writing it out and just talk it through with me, because sometimes I think, like, when I sit to write out these cases, it's like so many issues, so if that's a barrier. But we are reporting cases this week. I don't know if 10 cases is enough. I don't know what.
So we are reporting these and navigating are important, right? But I think if we tell people to chat reports, so they hear it in different from different.
Yeah, and I'm also working on advocacy frame about this issue to the state that is framing it as a legal problem as opposed to just the individual cases. So this helps. We're coming at that in a variety of ways. So hopefully one of them will stick.
So can we help you arrange for the
So it's either going to be one of my cases or one of Amanda's cases.
Yeah, I'll just give you only without getting my card, and we'll set up a time to talk. Yeah. But sorry, the main question is that when a client is supposed to receive their reimbursement check, it takes about at least a month, and it's not even from the marketplace, it's from like a third, from some contract organization.
And if the marketplace screws up and doesn't enroll them from, I mean, is it possible that
Yes, it's very possible.
and that retroactive
So the marketplace is not currently processing retroactive reimbursement requests. and I've been told that if they didn't disenroll the client from their Medicaid managed care plan, they're not going to do the reimbursement for that month. Right. So that is totally not fair, and it's just like not anything. It's not good for anybody, and it makes no sense. So that's why, like I was saying, like, and this is helpful to talk about with everyone. I don't have all the answers at all. But like with my clients, we are requesting that. My hope is to somehow get other than just the person on the phone that know what they're talking about tell me that they are not reimbursing, to get a letter saying that we're not reimbursing so that we can have an appeal and that we can start bringing these cases. I mean,
well, you do have that directive that it's not cost effective. The capitation
right.
care plan is greater than the part premiums, and they're not going to do it. That's just their policy. So that should be something in writing generally.
Yeah, that's right. But that I forgot that the policy that they said this was in writing. That the reasoning is that, but that's still not really. I guess it just brings up how do we challenge it?
Yeah, you have to challenge it with that.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Right. But so for clients, I guess the other point is that, like with this client that I signed, I told him, I don't know what you're going to get reimbursed for. I can't guarantee that you'll be reimbursed for months that you were. I can't guarantee that you're going to be reimbursed for anything in the past, basically. But we're going to work on it.
So I think that we're pointing that we're telling, like when we call account review and request the reimbursement, the Part D reimbursement will start happening. Is there anything that we're citing, like, according to this? Because they just pull out that big book of guidelines that they were used to give us any information about, and you read off this that says, well, according to my big book of secret information, these are usually get I don't have anything to say, well,
right.
Say, well, according to my contract manager, that's not the case. And we say, like, well, your contract manager is wrong.
And they say that in accounts review, not in the regular. I think if that's the case, you should request an appeal for the client. So that we disagree with your, no, you can request appeals. We can help clients request appeals. We can't represent clients in appeals. But that at least, because then if it's in an appeal, what that does is it guarantees that at some point in the next 3 months, the client will be able to bring this issue to somebody, like an independent hearing officer, which is something, and also it opens up another route of people at the marketplace who we can complain to. Because we have, but I don't think I understood that accounts review was telling that they have something in writing that contradicts that.
They have a whole book of guidelines.
Right.
That don't have access to.
Right.
That they just think, they'll think, well, hold on, I don't think that's true. And they pull out what they book and flip through and say, and then read off just whatever legal guideline it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then say that's that.
Yeah. Which is different from what the patient that has not reviewed. And there's not a MR people.
Right. And I understand, you're right that advocates have been requesting that book and are not getting it. But yeah. Lots of issues. Okay. I think I will move on to the network adequacy stuff. Can we go back there? So I'm going to go through just very briefly the different requirements that different kinds of plans have for what is an adequate network. And the reason that it's different between HMOs and Medicaid HMOs and PPOs is that they're all there's different requirements and also different places to report problems. So that's why I'm breaking it out this way. So Medicaid Medicaid managed care requirements. These are the most explicit, and yeah, so for a primary care provider, it should be 30 minutes or 30 miles in rural areas, and so for us in the city, 30 minutes is 30 minutes on the subway or by public transportation. Also, a client shouldn't be waiting more than 28 days for a standard appointment or 1 day for an urgent appointment. That doesn't mean that a client should be able to see any provider in the network within that time frame, but they should be able to see a doctor within their network within that time frame. And for a specialist, it's also 30 minutes or 30 miles. That's the area within which you need to be able to access somebody. So violations for Medicaid managed care plans, you report to the New York State Department of Health, and I have the 800 number throughout this. And I recently did this for a client, so you can just call with the client and make a complaint to them, and it's pretty brief. It's not hard to do, and we're trying to just keep doing it. Okay, so non-Medicaid HMOs, like QHCs in the marketplace and other HMOs. For these, the requirements are that the network must be adequate to meet the comprehensive health needs of its enrollees and to provide an appropriate choice of providers sufficient to provide the services covered under its enrollee's contract by determining sufficient number of providers are geographically accessible. So basically, it should be adequate. Networks are reviewed before a plan is offered in the market, not just the marketplace. They're reviewed by DFS or the New York State Department of Health for adequacy. So that's kind of on the front end, but on the back end, we're just trying to think about it from the client's perspective of, because there's not a specific requirement, if your client can't find a doctor in their network, we can make arguments about this. And violations about non-Medicaid HMO plans are reported to the New York State Department of Health also. Okay, so network adequacy issues for PPOs, EPOs, and POS plans. This is new for under the surprise billing law. That basically these plans have now the same requirements as non-Medicaid HMOs. So they have to have geographically accessible providers with appropriate expertise to treat their problems, their medical problems. But these, any issues with these networks, we report to DFS. So on the next slide, this is just a screenshot of the DFS complaint form, and I just include it because we have the link in there too. The DFS complaint form is pretty easy, and on the top it says, are you a representative filling this out for someone else? So you can just fill it out for your clients. And again, we're really trying to track these issues and kind of like all the issues that we talk about, I guess, but network adequacy means a lot of things, and it shows up in a lot of different ways for clients. So we're trying to be clear in the network about what we're seeing and how we want it to be fixed. So, network adequacy in action. You enrolled Samantha in health insurance a few months ago, and now she's calling you because you haven't heard from her, but everything was great, except recently she's been experiencing depression, and she's trying to find a psychologist. And she can't find one in her network. She tells you she's been calling through the list of providers from the plan's website, but no doctor accepts her insurance, or if they do, their next appointment isn't for 2 months. So, any ideas about things we could do to help Samantha get a doctor? Yeah.
Well, John has similar things. I guess you could call the plan and say, hey, I tried this, but it didn't work. Who do you suggest? Who do you do it? And if you got not providing a service network,
I think
that's a tough list.
it is, yeah. None of this is you're right. That is a tough list, but it's true that you can call the plan. That is, and. Oh yeah.
And then, oh, well, I don't think we do this. No, I don't think. there's no requirement.
Right. Well, and even then, right, and they wouldn't meet the 28 days.
So, even with that,
Yeah, that's totally true. And I think that for clients, part of why we're doing this training is that I think it is easy, because if a client approaches you with this problem, your instinct is, well, we can go to the next slide, actually. Your instinct isn't to do, and you can go through all of these. Here's all the examples that I give for what you can do. But Greg is totally right that none of these get the client a doctor immediately. But this is best practice, I think, and the best that we can do now to be kind of cataloging some of these issues. So first, we want to know what kind of plan she has to understand what the requirements even are. Then we want to know more about what she's done to find a doctor. So the client might say, I've called all these people, but just get more into the details. Who are you calling? Like, where are you finding the list? And also maybe just call with her, especially with some marketplace plans. You might get more, like providers, offices don't always know what plans they accept, so sometimes it might help to call with a client just to double check. Also, we really want to be filing complaints with the appropriate agency. So if it's an HMO, that's the number. If it's not an HMO, then we can just do the DFS complaint. And you want to get the reference number for your complaint. Then I think call the plan, you speak with a supervisor, and you say, I filed a complaint because your plan is not meeting the network adequacy law. I don't know if they'll care, but if you have a complaint number, that might move them a little bit quicker. And you can say, she has a right to see a doctor. If it's an HMO, this is the requirement. If it's a non-HMO, like within a reasonable period of time. And this is just here to kind of give you something to say to the plan on the phone. And then request that someone at the plan help her find a psychologist in the network. And sometimes there are plans, this is a requirement of the plan. To do business in New York, they are supposed to meet these network adequacy requirements. So if they're failing, there is often somebody within the plan who's there to help clients access providers. We also want to file a grievance with the plan, and that's also because that triggers that they have to respond to our complaint. And then we want to fill out the Child Network Adequacy Complaint Form, which we'll go to the next slide. Also just not a great explanation, but just to show that it's really not that hard to fill out this form. It's pretty brief. It doesn't have any identifying information about the client. It's just to say, like, for this client, this is someone who I was enrolling in Medicaid. He came to me because he couldn't find a doctor in his QHP. So it was a QHP, and then he became Medicaid eligible. So he had affinity. He couldn't find a primary care doctor, a cardiologist, or a urologist. He spent weeks searching. He called the plan. He checked the website. He called different doctors. He was told the provider does this in your network. There was wrong contact information. The provider said they only took Affinity Medicare, which isn't the plan, or Affinity Medicaid. And then I just wrote up briefly, he called 5 to 10 doctors a day to find a urologist. Didn't work, basically. And this is really helpful because we are advocating with the state for clients and saying, like, we tried to help this client find X doctor, and they're saying, well, look at the list. And it's like, well, the list doesn't work. So this is what we need to show them to demonstrate that. Okay, so that's kind of network adequacy. So when your client is having trouble finding a doctor. Now I'm going to talk about transitional care rights. If your client has a doctor and has to switch plans, are there ways they can do them? So basically, certain HMO enrollees, and that's any HMO, Medicaid, or non-Medicaid, have a legal right to continue receiving care from their current doctor, even if that doctor is not in their new plan's network, for a fixed time period. And I'll go through all of that. So the way to think about it is if you have a client who is switching plans and is having care from a doctor, we want to think, can we fit them into any of these boxes to get them at least a couple more months with their current doctor? So who's eligible? The client needs to be enrolled in an HMO. This is only a protection for clients who are enrolled in HMOs. And if your client has a life-threatening or degenerative and disabling disease or condition, and they are receiving an ongoing course of treatment, this is one option. They are eligible for 60 days of transitional care. So, for example, client Max has cerebral palsy. He was enrolled in Medicaid until he could no longer be in Medicaid, and now he had to enroll in a private HMO through the marketplace. He had been seeing a doctor, Dr. H, to be fitted for a wheelchair, which required multiple appointments with the doctor. He's in the midst of his trying to get fitted, and then finds out that the doctor does not accept the new insurance that he has. So, so the transitional care should enable Max to continue seeing this doctor for 60 days as though the doctor is in network. And so the new insurance will pay the doctor as though he's an in-network doctor for 60 days. And I'll talk more about this. So, it's what? It's about making a child health law? Yeah, so if there's a child that has had surgery, but in the meantime, they self-medicated, so their income went up, and they have to transition to child health plus. What happens, there's always that gap when you transfer, when you switch from Medicaid to child health plus. So, two issues. First, the doctor couldn't service the child, and then they weren't covered for those 2 weeks. Because after the 15th, they have to follow along. What happens with the child? So if the issue is the client is uninsured, that's, they were insured, but their income went up, so the eligibility changed. And they were kicked off immediately. So you're saying that the client missed a month of coverage. So what happens is when they transition from Medicaid to child health plus, if you're kicked off after the 15, right, then you lose the coverage. Yeah. So this is, so I would say that to separate out, one of the ways to not have that gap in coverage, I think, but we've had some success advocating for some clients in the marketplace that their child health plus should go retroactive, especially if they've been disenrolled from Medicaid. Because this issue of gap shouldn't exist, right? The client shouldn't. Right, it actually should. Right. But so how do we make it not exist is 10,000 calls to the marketplace and emailing me about it, and I can help with those calls so that's one issue that I don't have great answers on. The other issue is if the Child Health Plus plan is an HMO, then the child would have the right if this is yeah, as long as it's an HMO, they have to abide by these transitional care. So when the child should be able to get 60 days of care from his old doctor. But with 60 days, in these cases, when the 60 days begins might be a question. So there's more advocacy to be done. But yeah, it should, even though it's Medicaid, it doesn't matter which kind of HMO it is, as long as it's an HMO. Then how do you get them? There's no way to get them.
If you apply for the insurance, so let's say Medicaid is ending June 30th, you apply on June 17th. As long as you apply before the insurance is going to end, you call the account review, let them know that you need to backdate the coverage, and you put in the request for it. Backdate, so it won't happen immediately, it probably will happen, the backdate will happen, let's say in July, then you would just submit a claim to the provider for that month, the insurance will eventually go back.
We even have situations where people are pregnant, babies, know they're covered for 30 days.
Right.
But born.
Well, the gap is so if there's a Child Health Plus gap, and the gap is because the child was born and is uninsured.
Right.
I think we've heard of anecdotally some times when it works, but only if the child has incurred major bills. But that's a different gap than one caused by the marketplace by not providing adequate notice that you need to be able to see your child. So there's different reasons I think come out with different answers. Just to be really annoying. Okay, so another way that a client might be eligible for transitional care, if they're enrolled in an HMO and they are in the second trimester of pregnancy by the date they've enrolled. So that client is going to be eligible for transitional care through postpartum care. So I think that's huge. It's a huge right that might be very useful for certain clients who have to switch insurance but really like the doctor that they're seeing, don't want to or can't find a new one. So, for example, Laura makes a navigator appointment with you or someone in your agency, and she has a special enrollment period to enroll. Because, she quit her job to go freelance and her COBRA just ended, so that created a special enrollment. She is 16 weeks pregnant, she's been seeing a doctor she loves, but that doctor does not take any plan on the marketplace. If she enrolls in an HMO through the marketplace, she should be able to keep accessing this doctor through her transitional care rights. I'll go through, I'm just giving the 3 ways someone can qualify, and then I'll talk through how we actually get it to work. Okay, so the last way that a client might be eligible is they're enrolled in an HMO, they're engaged in a course of treatment, and their provider leaves their plan for reasons other than broader disciplinary action. The client should be eligible for 90 days of transitional care with that provider, or if the client was in the second trimester at the time their doctor leaves the plan, they should be eligible for postpartum care. So your question is a great one of, okay, so you have this right to transitional care, but how do you actually get it? So, just kidding, I have an example first. And I love this question, it was really good. So Rachel calls you really upset. You helped to enroll her in a QHP a few months ago, but you haven't heard from her since. And now she says she wants to change insurance plans because she just went to her OBGYN and was told that they're not taking her insurance anymore. And if you or your navigators are thinking, oh no, you don't have a special enrollment period, just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you have a special enrollment period. You can't change plans on the marketplace, but you do have rights to continue with this doctor. So that's kind of a way that the transition care would come up. Okay, so how do you get it? And you can go through the others if you should. Just to back up for a second, the idea of transitional care is that this doctor you want to keep seeing we're gonna try and get them to act like an in-network doctor for the period of time that you're eligible for care. So first you want to make sure that the provider doesn't actually accept the client's plan. And let me just use some example plans because it's too complicated right now, and these examples are just the first plans that pop into my head. So say the client is in Affinity, but they had been in Fidelis. Doesn't matter Medicaid or non-Medicaid, they're transferring into an Affinity HMO plan. So you want to confirm that the provider does not accept the Affinity HMO, because you can't get transitional care if they do, but it would be good if they did actually. You also want to ask the provider if they're going to be willing to bill Affinity as out of network, and they're going to be paid the Affinity in-network rate. So this is a little complicated. Basically, like I said, the doctor, even though he's not in the Affinity network, he's going to act like he is. So he has to follow the Affinity rules, and he has to accept the in-network rate. You also want to call the client's HMO, in this magical faces affinity, and you want to find someone on the phone who knows anything about this. So that basically you're calling to say, like, my client has transitional care rights. Their doctor is going to call Affinity to bill. What number do they call to do out-of-network billing? Like, what's your process here? Because that way we're trying to just help the client negotiate these two things. So we're trying to give the provider as much information as possible. Then you want to follow up with the client and the provider to make sure that it's actually working, that they are able to that the doctor is able to do the billing and it's all happening. You have to be persistent with this. We also, if it's not working, we want to file a complaint with the Office of Managed Care. And also keep in mind that balance billing of Medicaid members is prohibited. So if the client has transitioned into the Affinity HMO, the Medicaid plan, and the doctor says to them, this out-of-network rate is too low, this Affinity rate is too low, if they were not in the Medicaid plan, the client could say, well, I'll pay the difference if they choose to do that. But in the Medicaid plan, you can't do that. So before I move on to that, can we go back for a second? Sorry, to that, it's kind of a lot of information. Yeah. So it depends on, so the three ways that I outlined how you get transitional care, it depends on which one. So if your doctor leaves the plan, then you have transitional care rights for 90 days, or,
So the provider will have
so all this only, so this is a right that the client has if their doctor agrees to work with them on it, basically. So if a doctor leaves Affinity, for example, because they don't like the rates that Affinity is paying, they might not want to work with your client. But having one client who you're working with for a couple more months is different than accepting the whole plan. So I don't want to discourage people, but to effectuate this rate, to get the client the transitional care they are entitled to, does require a lot of legwork and multiple parties need to understand and see about it.
Yeah. So in one case, the additional gets the right additional care gets triggered when the provider needs. Okay.
The other one is when the client leaves the network and has to switch to, and is switching to a different plan. And has a chronic condition or is in their second trimester pregnancy.
Okay.
It's either that they have a chronic condition and they leave their plan, or they are in their second month of pregnancy when they leave their plan, or that they their provider leaves the plan and they are engaged in an ongoing course of treatment. So if your PCP leaves your plan, and you just see them once a year, this right's probably not going to apply to you unless you can make an argument that you have a chronic condition and your PCP is helping you manage it. But again, who you're making that argument to is really the plan. You're calling the plan to say, I'm trying to get my client transitional care. I think it is really, it could work. It works for some clients. It should work. And I think it can be really helpful for some people really to fit these requirements. And it's not going to help you see your doctor forever, but it should buy you some time. You need to find a new in-network doctor. That's kind of how I'm trying to think about it. Yeah. And it's the same with the provider, right? Sometimes if you have a billing office, you just know that they're just doing an out-of-network bill. It's not that big of a deal for them. Thanks. Okay. So informal advocacy. This is kind of just, doesn't fit within a right, but just wanted to bring it up as something that you can do. So we've seen doctors being listed as in-network with a plan, but the office says they don't accept that plan. And I'm sure we've all probably had that experience at one time or another with a client. So if the doctor is listed in-network, we want to check, are they in-network for the actual location that the patient is seeing them? Because, yeah, so if they are in-network, if the listing on the plan says, you know, Dr. X at this address, and your client, you call this address, and they say, we don't take it there, you want to call the plan and ask to speak with provider relations and ask them to intervene with the doctor. This could work. You know, these doctors have contracts with the plan saying that they accept it. So it's not, the plan doesn't want doctors who are contracted with them not to accept it. So they have a little bit of a reason to actually do something in this instance. If the doctor is not actually in network in that location, you want to help the patient or the client see if they can make an appointment at another office where they are in network. And if the doctor is listed improperly, you want to file a complaint. And this is an issue that's near and dear to me because I had a client who, it's just like, we basically missed the transitional care period as a result of miscommunication between the plan and the doctor, because the doctor says we don't take it, the plan says you do, and then it's kind of like, I feel like I often see the worst case scenarios, whereas, so with another plan and another doctor, maybe this would have been resolved. So yeah, we want to just make a complaint if it's not an HMO and the listing is incorrect, or to the managed care line if it is an HMO. And you can just send me a quick email or call me, just like when you're angry, and I'll ask follow-up questions about it.
Yeah, and remember form.
And then now we're going to form, yeah.
Because the idea when we created that charge complaint form, the idea was that we were going to inundate the effective form. We haven't done one. So we hear a lot of, and we make the form so that it was easier for you guys to report an issue. So you just have to check, and that's it. So we then do that whenever we see those cases. I mean, we can send it form again because if you mistake it, that's fine. We send it.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, it's not, don't feel like you need, it's, this form isn't, like when we complain to the marketplace about an issue, you need to be so specific about all the things that happen, and sometimes I set aside time, you know, to like really write up the case. This is just like quick explanation.
And now that it's all about yeah. Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and like right now, the same is using the network,
Yeah.
plan, right? So if they don't hear from
Right. And we're working also on getting more information from the state about when they review the plans, what precisely they're doing, how they're actually reviewing them. Yeah, because New York is recognized kind of as a national leader because we have these great rules about network adequacy, but if they're not being followed, we need to be the ones who are pushing for them to be followed. Okay, so back to kind of the beginning, choosing the right plan. If you have a chance to work with a client as they're transitioning plans, here's some ways, here's some tips and tricks, I guess. First of all, for providers, you really want your client to make a list of all the doctors that they want to continue seeing, and then we're going to check each doctor to see if there is a plan. And the way that you check, and this is what I do when I navigate with clients. Well, first, you want to remember that just because a facility is a network doesn't mean that all the providers in that facility are a network. So I'll have clients say to me, oh, Lenox Hill, great, my doctor's there. No, just because your doctor has an office at Lenox Hill does not mean this plan where Lenox Hill is a network is going to be accepted by your doctor. So it's really important to kind of say that to clients. Also, you really want to check the location where they're listed as a network. We've seen instances where doctors are listed as a network and you call and it's like, yeah, if you're admitted to the hospital and they see you, that's a network, but you can't make an appointment with them. So for clients who really care about their providers, you need to dig a little deeper with them. Please keep going. So to check if they're a network, first you want to ask the doctor's office. So I would say call and or look at the doctor's website. Oftentimes I look at the doctor's website while I'm on hold to call them. And you want to be clear which marketplace or exchange plans, if that's the world that you're living in, do you participate with? Because as we know, every insurance company has multiple plans and doctor's offices will be like, I accept Affinity. Well, do you accept the Affinity Silver Leaf plan or whatever, you know, like you really have to get specific. Mm-hmm.
Whether they say marketplace plans, they understand what you mean by that or not?
What are others? Not always.
I've got often I would say, but take the color plan.
Color plan.
Yeah, gold and silver.
Ah.
And I've had other officers tell me, I have no idea what plan they accept. I said, well, how do you appoint a solution?
Right. I usually have people ask, talk to the billing manager.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I should actually have
And they should
that.
turn around and say, I have Medicaid managed care, or, you know.
Whichever it is, right, you want to be really specific.
Gold plan, and sometimes you do have to pay Obamacare because that's.
Yeah.
So what triggers them to understand the goal, the middle here, or the word exchange, or the word marketplace?
All of them.
All of them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not like,
Metal, marketplace, exchange, Obamacare.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing when you do even, you know, presentations in the community, you'll start talking about people who care. Like Obamacare.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So you're all very familiar with this step. And then also just looking, cross-checking, so looking for the provider on the plan's website. Again, checking the offices, and then I just print it out as proof. You know, that way the client, you know, I looked at your plan directory on this day, and this guy was in here, so yeah. And then just briefly wanted to touch on the plan formulary, and this is really not, I don't know if this is enough information, but again, when clients are coming to you with, and they're switching plans, you really want to help them make sure that their prescriptions are on the new plan formulary. And again, when I navigate with clients, I check if the prescription's covered, what tier is covered under, because that affects how much they're going to pay for the copay. If the prescriptions are subject to the deductible, so basically on the marketplace, you know, each plan is different. So if it's subject to the deductible, then until the client pays their deductible, they don't even get to access the copay. So that's going to be a huge issue for clients who have a $2,000 deductible and a chronic condition. Also want to know if the prescription requires prior authorization, and all this information is going to be on the formulary, which should be easy to get to theoretically through the marketplace link. Because if it requires prior authorization, that's just good to know. Because sometimes these clients, you know, people's medical needs don't match up with the timeline that they have to deal with all this bureaucratic stuff, as we know. So if they're running out of their prescription and they need to get a new one, and their plan doesn't start until the 1st, and they need prior authorization, they need to have they can't just walk into a pharmacy on the 1st and get their prescription. So you kind of want to help talk them through that. Also, you want to know if the drug is subject to step therapy, just in case what that really indicates is that the plan is going to require the client, it might require the client to try other options until they're allowed to get this prescription. So if you have a client who's, and there's more to step therapy than what I just said.
So, not like, someone who's having to take a certain generic drug before they take any drug.
Exactly.
They have to show this doesn't.
That to show it doesn't work, yeah. So for the purposes of right now, all I'm trying to say is that you just want to know if that's going to be an issue for a client, because if they're depending on a certain series of drugs, then they're not going to be happy when they get that information when they go to pick it up. And I also, sorry, just to go back for 1 second, there is a lot more information that I'm hoping to become more expert in about ways to get around this. Except, so if you have a client who, you help them find a plan that like somehow magically has all of their providers and 4 out of 5 of their prescriptions, just because it doesn't take 1 prescription, they might be able to get an exception into the formulary. So you can always email me and ask about it. Yeah.
The transitional care applies to the drug formularies as well, like let's say they were taking one medicine and then their new plan requires step therapy, would they be able to, like, how would that work?
So the transitional care that I talked about today, that law does not apply to formularies, but there are different rules about formularies that I honestly don't know well enough to say, but can provide information about. So, yeah, there are some rights that I don't know exactly what they are, and it's not the same.
And sometimes the clients may have already done it, but they're into getting all the information and they come to so.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, not to be super dire about everything, just to kind of raise issues because, like you said, part of what I do when I'm helping clients transition, what I thought I was going to do when I predicted this, when I created this fellowship was just like helping clients switch between MAGI and QHPs, which is like, now it's like that's the easiest thing ever, but these are just steps for that. So yeah. Any other questions about anything? Well, thank you for all of your information, and here's my contact information if you need it. And please, you can always email me, and I might just send you back the form if I don't want you to fill it out. So yeah, thanks. Do you want to stop the webinar?
Okay, so